What is the year of your birth?
1991.
From what country or countries were your ancestors located?
Both my parents were born and raised in England. My dad's parents moved there from Scotland, so on my dad's side, Scottish, and on my mom's side, English as far back as I know.
In what part of state, or what city, part of what state and country did you spend your childhood?
I grew up in Spartanburg, South Carolina, but in the summers I would go for about a month to visit family over in England.
In your childhood, did you live in an urban area, suburban, or rural area?
I was raised in a suburban area, but we had access to, we were within an hour's drive of lots of natural places, so we go on family hikes pretty often.
Where do you live now?
I live in Spartanburg still.
Alright, so you lived here your whole life?
I have.
Okay. Where you live now, would you say it's suburban?
Yes.
Okay. So you lived in South Carolina for about 20 years?
Yes.
In Spartanburg. So you visited England, but you never lived there for a long period of time?
No. The longest period I've stayed there is probably 6 weeks.
Okay. Do you speak another language?
French a little bit, not enough to be fluent, but I speak French.
So do you use English the most?
Yes.
Which economic class would you consider your parents to be in?
Middle class.
What about yourself?
I guess middle class in terms of my opinions and perception of things around me, but I'm not old enough to consider myself in an income bracket yet.
To you, what is nature or the natural world?
I mean, we tend to extricate man from it, which is, I would say, what I think of when I think of nature as the places on Earth that man has touched least. But I do think we've been around for long enough that we have to include ourselves as a part of it.
Were your parents' livelihoods or interests somehow connected to working with or in nature?
Probably not. I mean, they're English professors, so I guess they have more subjective freedom than people in math or science fields. So, you know, they can wax poetic about nature, and they tend to do so from time to time.
Is your livelihood or interest somehow connected to or working with nature?
I'd say I have a deep interest in it, but my path through college looks like it's not going to lead me into a career that has to do with it, necessarily.
As a child, how much free time did you prefer to spend outside? As little as possible, some, or as much as possible?
I would say relative to my peers, a whole lot. So maybe, yeah, as much as possible. My younger sister more so than I, but I played with her more than anyone else as a child, so we hung out outside a lot.
What about now?
Yeah, I get outside as much as I can, but it's not as much as I would like. So I'd say I don't spend a whole lot of time outside, but when I can, I sure do.
What things do you do to connect to the natural world?
I went backpacking in the Southwest over our January term, and I felt probably more deeply connected with nature than I have. I also hiked in the Alps in Switzerland, and that's the only other time I've felt that strong of a connection with nature.
List some outdoor activities that you have experienced over the past year.
Kayaking, backpacking, bicycling, playing soccer, swimming in the ocean. Yeah, that's all that's coming to mind right now.
Awesome.
Oh, rock climbing a little bit.
Yeah. How have you learned about nature? Like, is there anything in your background that makes you more knowledgeable about nature?
In terms of animals and biology, I read a whole lot about it growing up. I was very interested in animals. But I would say that interest stemmed from growing up with my dad, who was an avid bird watcher and always was pointing out things on walks, and is pretty familiar with the natural world.
Awesome. How has your heritage, culture, or way of life influenced your view of nature?
I don't know that it's necessarily because of the country they were from. I think it's more just the type of people they are. But I would definitely say my heritage in terms of my parents has made me care and have an interest in the environment much more than I would otherwise.
How important is nature to you? And do you think some elements of nature will be lost in the future, and how will that affect you?
Nature is very important to me. I always idealize living in a city, but I think deep down I know that I couldn't do it for an extended period of time because I do have to get out and be alone and be with nature from time to time. I do think various elements of nature will be lost. I think we lose biodiversity all the time, which is irreversible in our frame of reference, which does take its toll on me. I think I used to get much more upset about extinctions and threatened species and pollution and destruction of land than I do now. Not that I think it's less of a problem, just that I think my ability to change it is not enough to spend that much effort being upset. Now I just try to do what I can but not think about those issues.
Can you name and explain any natural objects or places in the natural world that hold some special meaning or significance to you? So anything in nature that's really important to you, that you care about?
Trees. I like the variety of trees. I love to look at trees in their shapes. I think I'm a math major, so they're very fractalesque, and that's one of my favorite things in mathematics. Mountains, I don't know why, but being in mountains is just very powerful for me. So I would say there's not a specific item, but when I'm in vast, kind of untamed areas, it does speak to me a whole lot more.
Okay. Do you feel that knowing the names of objects in the natural world, like the names of plants or animals, changes how you feel about them?
Absolutely, because I think if you know the name of something, you instantly know something more than you did beforehand about it. And I do think the more you know about something, the stronger a connection you can feel with it.
Yeah. Do you gather any product from nature for food, medicine, art, hobby, or sport, or anything like that?
I don't think so. I don't tend to keep natural items as belongings.
Cool. Has your family passed on any sayings about nature? Or do you remember any other sayings that people have told you about nature that have stuck with you?
I think the stereotypical one is take only pictures and leave only footprints, which I like just because it's a very simple phrase. My parents have never given me any kind of explicit message about how to interact with nature. I think I just learn by example rather than by statement.
Do you see a link between maintaining your way of life and maintaining the natural world?
Absolutely. I think I am dependent upon it for my mental well-being to an extent, and I also feel like I have to do my part to help it in return.